Thank you, Senator Braun. Senator Braun raised the issue of investing, and I agree. I think it's one of the reasons that I support the U.S. Innovation and Competition Act, because I think that's a place where we are investing in science in a way that we really need to, science and innovation. And one of the provisions that is included in that I support requires that at least 20% of NSF investment go to EPSCoR states like New Hampshire. So, Dr. Punch, can you talk about why it's important for us to also encourage small states to participate in EPSCoR and to invest in those programs?
Madam Chair, thank you so much for that question. If you recall last year when I gave the testimony, I said talent and ideas are democratized all across our nation, no exception. I happen to come from one of the small states too, and therefore I fully understand that when you energize talent everywhere, I think innovation can happen anywhere. I always say innovation anywhere, opportunities everywhere, for which we need to energize talent everywhere. I've been deeply committed to this since I got in. In fact, my central pillar of my three-pillar vision is about ensuring inclusivity, access, and ensuring that we embrace diversity of all kinds, diversity of geography, socioeconomic demography, and racial diversity. So we need to make sure that talent everywhere is energized. So that's the first point that I want to lead off with. So if you look at some of the programs that NSF has launched, let's take the AI institutes or the quantum even programs. You will find, you'll be very pleased to know that AI institutes right now with just 2 rounds, with 16 institutes, spans 40 states and the District of Columbia. And a third round that is coming in. And this is an intentional effort because I truly believe that AI is everywhere and AI should be everywhere. And quantum, likewise, should be inspired everywhere. So I think in terms of, therefore, how do we get these ideas that we say that is everywhere to rise up? And that's why I talked about this new program that we launched, where if you look at institutions that truly deserve the level of investments with the fantastic ideas that is everywhere, one way of doing that is to make sure some of the institutions have the support, for the research infrastructure support that makes it possible for them to rise up and be successful in the gold standard merit review process of NSF. How do we get those institutions, other institutions also to play ball? And this is why the granted program is a virtual research infrastructure office. How do we get research development support? How do we get pre-award, post-award support? How do we get support in terms of how do we transact intellectual property? How do we build partnership with industry? This kind of a support that is not necessarily available in all institutions. How do we make that possible in historically black colleges, universities, in other MSIs, in states like the EPSCoR states, where there is a lot of talent and ideas that needs to be lifted up? So I'm a huge fan with the granted program to lift those ideas and make them successful. So I'm very, very comfortable with the fact that we have it as an aspirational goal of how we might invest in all these states, the EPSCoR states included, in a way that can bring out those talent and ideas.
And so you would agree then that helping to build that infrastructure also means ensuring that NSF's large-scale programs like science and technology centers, engineering research centers, mid-scale infrastructure, AI institutes, the new technology director, and all of those should also encompass EPSCoR states.
Absolutely. In fact, I've made the point, in fact, publicly I've said this, that when institutions like R1 institutions lead and they bring in partnership other institutions, I've said that we should also look at R2 institutions and MSIs and HBCUs. Sometimes they should be the lead and R1 should be partner institutions. And so I'm fully in concert with the fact that all these institutes can be everywhere and should be everywhere because ideas are everywhere.
And does that 20% of NSF investment, is that a goal that allows us to do that?
So an aspirational goal, because if the granted program, as we have outlined it, which I am confident is going to be widely successful, you will find that we will end up over the years that we are essentially probably exceeding even that kind of investment that goes to the EPSCoR states and the regions of our nation where the investments are not as prominent right now. So, as an aspirational goal, it's a good goal to have.
Well, thank you. I'm counting on Senator Moran as a conferee of the conference committee to hold tight on that 20% to go to EPSCoR states. Small EPSCoR states. So share that with Senator Moran since he's not here right now. Let me also ask you, Dr. Punch, about the the number of additional grants that NSF would be able to fund if you are funded at the request level. What does that allow you to do that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise? And how do you see that contributing to our goal of promoting innovation and competition?
Madam Chair, if you'll recall the last testimony that I gave, I talked about the numbers of grants and what we need and what we are leaving on the cutting room floor. I, in fact, invoked this when I was with Senator Moran in Kansas, when a question was asked from a faculty member who had gotten a competitive rating and said, but I did not get funded, right? So at NSF, we receive about 40 to 50,000 grants a year, grant proposals a year. Last year, for example, it's about 43,000 grant proposals. We fund about 11,000 of them, about 11,000 of them, at a 25% sort of a success rate, let us put it that way. Now, clearly, if you ask me, Punch, so what is the number of proposals that is recommended by the gold standard merit review process that the NSF, is very well known for? It turns out it is close to about 1/3 or 30% of the proposals. So clearly, we have a number of proposals that are ranked competitive that are left behind on the cutting room floor, right? So right now, with 25%, with the new investments that are being proposed, we will get to about 2,800 more proposals. Our success rate going from 25% to 26%. But I also talked about the size of our grants last time. I said average is about 200K. We need to work towards raising it to 300K. With this increase, we will get from 200K to 240K. We'll be part way there. We'll be 20% of the way there instead of the 50% that we desired. But that's a good trend to take to where we need to be in terms of how we should get this done. And I see this as a national security issue because the unfunded ideas and unfunded proposals are the ones that our competitors invest in. And we should not leave that in the cutting room floor. And so I'm hoping and I'm grateful for all of you for recognizing that. And I'm grateful to the President of the administration for investing in NSF because this would make that possible.
Thank you. Senator Moran is back, but while he's still getting settled.
Another question.
Yes.
That'd be great.
I will do that because I wanted to wait until you got back to follow up on your question to Administrator Nelson about the 2025 date because obviously it depends on a lot of things going right if we're going to make that 2025 date. And I was a little fuzzy on how confident you are that that can actually happen. So can you tell us today that if you get your budget request, that you will be able to make that 2025 date for the landing?
We will not fly astronauts until it's safe. And if that means there's a delay, then we will delay. But we have every reason to believe that we are on a schedule that, first of all, that Artemis will certainly, through the SLS rocket and the Orion spacecraft, be ready, and we will have flown in 2024 a crew after this first test flight later this year. We will have flown a crew in a 30-day mission in lunar orbit. And then we have every confidence to feel that under the contract with SpaceX, that in 2024, they will land an uncrewed lander as part of their demonstration, and that a year later, in 2025, that we will be ready for them to have launched their lander into lunar orbit. Orion goes into lunar orbit, the crew is transferred, and the lander goes down and lands and stays for whatever the prescribed time is, a day or so. And then they come back and rendezvous in lunar orbit with Orion and come home. Now, of course, we believe that that's the schedule. But I can just tell you that if I'm making the decisions, it's not going to fly until it's safe.
Well, I certainly think we would all expect no less than that.
Yes, ma'am.
That certainly needs to be the bottom line for the decision-making. My question is really, assuming that it is safe, are we going to meet all those other deadlines in order to ensure that it's safe and to get the landing done?
And I appreciate your question, and you ought to ask that question. It's also true that every space mission that we've had, there have been delays. You think back to Apollo. Look what happened after the Apollo 1 fire. I mean, they were down for over 2 years. And still, with an incredible amount of money poured in, were able to make President Kennedy's goal of landing on the moon by the end of the decade. Look at the space shuttle. The space shuttle, a fantastic flying machine, by the way, that we now know had certain technical flaws, and we lost 14 souls. It, too, was delayed until 1981, when, in fact, a lot of people thought that it was going to fly not long after Apollo-Soyuz in 75 and fly in the late 70s. It didn't happen. And look what happened. When we lost Challenger, we were down 2.5 years. And then in 2003, we lost Columbia. And we were down another couple of years, and the further delays. So you can't go until it's right, and all these things cost money. These delays cost money. That's another reason we had a question here about competition. That's another reason to get to fixed price contracts and then hold them to it. And we are doing that with the landers for the moon.